The invitation said black tie. It said champagne reception, 7-course dinner, live orchestra. It said Meridian Grand Hotel, penthouse ballroom, Saturday, 7 p.m. What it did not say, what no one expected, was the name of the groom. Victoria Ashworth, 36, CEO of Ashworth Capital Group, had built her empire from 42 floors of glass and steel in downtown Harrington. She had acquired 3 failing firms in the span of 8 months. She had walked out of a board meeting the morning her mother died and returned that same afternoon. She wore charcoal and ivory and never read. She did not flinch. She did not waver. She had never, in 11 years of corporate dominance, given anyone a reason to question her judgment. Until tonight, the ballroom held 300 guests, senators, investment bankers, 2 tech billionaires, a former Secretary of State. They wore their best and smiled their sharpest and held their crystal flutes with the casual ease of people who had never once worried about money. Marble columns, orchids flown in from Hawaii, chandeliers that cost more per piece than most families earned in a year. And there, at the end of the aisle, stood the groom. Lucas Hale was 34. He wore a suit that fit him well enough but was clearly off the rack. His shoes were polished, but not new. His hair was neatly combed back, dark brown, a few strands already escaping. He was lean and quiet, and he stood with the kind of stillness that looked like calm but wasn't. He was a mechanic, not the owner of a shop, a mechanic. He worked at a mid-tier garage on the east side of the city, doing engine diagnostics and brake jobs and oil changes for people who did not know his name and did not care. He drove a 7-year-old truck. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on Chestnut Hill Road with his daughter, Maisie, who was 8 years old and believed without qualification that her father was the greatest person alive. The guests noticed everything. A woman near the front row, wife of a hedge fund manager, neck dripping in diamonds, leaned toward her husband and whispered something that made him suppress a laugh. A man near the bar made no effort to suppress his. Someone said, loudly enough, "Is this a PR stunt?" Victoria walked the aisle alone. No father, no escort. Her dress was ivory silk, structured at the shoulders, a 9-foot train carried by 2 attendants. She looked straight ahead. She did not look at the guests. She did not look at the whispers. She looked at Lucas, and he looked back, not with relief, not with love, not with the trembling gratitude that people assumed a man of his situation would feel. He looked at her the way a person looks at a city from a great height, assessing, measuring, calm in a way that was almost unsettling. She noted this, filed it away. Good, she thought. He's steady. The ceremony was brief and formal. They exchanged vows written by lawyers, efficient, binding, devoid of sentiment. The officiant was the most expensive in the city and maintained a professional neutrality throughout. When the rings were exchanged, Lucas's hand did not shake. When they were declared married, there was polite applause from the guests who had decided this was, perhaps, a calculated eccentricity. The rest simply watched. Maisie sat in the 3rd row, wearing a lavender dress she had picked herself, and she clapped harder than anyone. At the reception, during the first hour, a man from Ashworth Capital's rival firm, Preston Gallagher, mid-50s, silver-haired, the kind of handsome that came from decades of privilege, cornered Victoria near the bar. "Tell me this is a negotiating move," he said. His smile was pleasant and predatory. "Because otherwise I'm going to start thinking you've lost your edge." "You've always thought that," she said. "It's never been true. The man fixes cars, Victoria. He does a great many things." She retrieved her champagne. "Enjoy the evening." "Preston." She moved away. She did not look back. Lucas, across the room, was watching Preston Gallagher. His gaze was not hostile. It was the way a person watches a door they expect to open. He looked away before Preston noticed. Victoria noticed. She said nothing. 3 weeks earlier, the garage smelled of motor oil and old metal, and the particular cold that seeped through industrial doors in November. Lucas was flat on his back under a 2019 Civic, working a stuck bolt with patience he had learned from necessity, when Maisie appeared at the edge of his vision. "Mr. Ferris let me come back," she announced. "Did he?" I told him I was doing a research project on mechanical systems. Is that true? A pause. Partially, he let it go. She sat on an overturned plastic bucket and opened her book something about marine biology this week and read in easy silence while he worked. This was their rhythm. She followed him. He let her. Whatever job he was doing, she found a way to be present without being in the way. Which was a skill, he thought, that most adults never mastered. At 5 o'clock, his coworker Derek finished a brake job on the lift next to him and wiped his hands on a shop rag and looked over at Maisie on her bucket. "Kids here again," Derek said. "Neutral, not unkind." "She is. Don't you have, like, after-school programs or something?" "My wife's always telling me about them. Art, sports, whatever." Lucas pulled himself out from under the car. "She'd rather be here." Derek considered this. Strange kid. Yes, Lucas agreed. He wasn't bothered by it. Maisie was strange in the specific way that people who had read too much and talked to adults too often were strange, comfortable in silence, uncomfortable in groups, more interested in how things worked than in what other people thought of her. He recognized this because he had been, at some point, the same. He didn't know when exactly he had stopped being strange and started being dangerous. The two had happened so gradually he couldn't separate them. They walked home afterward through streets that were unremarkable in every way. Narrow sidewalks, corner stores, a laundromat with a cracked window that had been cracked for 3 years. Their neighbors were a retired postal worker named Gerald, who watched baseball too loudly, and a young woman named Danielle, who worked night shifts somewhere and left passive-aggressive notes about parking. A normal block. A quiet life. Lucas made spaghetti. Maisie helped with the garlic bread and burned one edge, and reported this as if it were a news event worth documenting. "The bottom left corner is a write-off," she said, examining it. "Put it here." He took the burned piece. "I'll eat it. It's going to taste like carbon. I've had worse." She looked at him with the particular look she had, eyes slightly narrowed, head tilted that meant she was filing something away. He didn't know what she did with all the things she filed. He assumed they would come out eventually. They always did. They ate at the small kitchen table, and she told him about bioluminescent plankton and how certain deep-sea creatures produce their own light in water so dark that light had never reached it from the surface. He listened. Actually listened. Not the half attention of a tired person waiting for a break. Full attention, eye contact, questions. She noticed. She always noticed. "Mr. Patterson at school says my dad is a mechanic," she said at some point. "That's accurate." He said it like it was something bad. Lucas served her more pasta. "What did you say?" "I said mechanics understand systems that most people don't even think about, and that without mechanics, every important person in the city would be stranded." She paused. "And then I said his car looked like it needed new brake pads." Lucas did not smile, but his eyes did something. "Was I wrong?" she asked. To say it like that. He thought about it seriously, because she asked seriously. "No," he said. "You were precise. Precision isn't rude." She seemed satisfied with this. The neighbors talked. The neighbors always talked. Shame about that little girl, no mother, and the father just does odd jobs, you know. As if a life of small wages was a moral failure. As if raising a child alone, well, carefully, without bitterness. As if that counted for nothing. The woman on the second floor, Barbara something, had said directly to Lucas once, "She needs a mother figure, you know. It's not the same for little girls." He had looked at her for long enough that she'd found a reason to go back inside. He did not need to agree with Barbara to know that Maisie had lost something. He knew that. He carried it. He just refused to carry it in front of her. He ignored the rest of it the way he ignored most things. He had long since decided which opinions were worth his attention and which were not. The list of opinions worth his attention was short and specific, and did not include anyone who hadn't yet proven they would stay. The hitch was that someone had been paying attention to him, someone who moved very quietly through the city and asked questions in ways that didn't feel like questions. 3 people, over 2 weeks. A neighbor who wasn't quite a neighbor, a customer at the garage who was too interested in the wrong things, a woman on the bus who glanced at him once too often and wore shoes designed for running. He catalogued them without reaction, added them to a running count. He did not confront any of them. A person who knew what to look for could always tell they were being catalogued. Better to let them think they'd been invisible. The count was getting high. He didn't know why yet. He had his guesses. The guesses were not comforting, but they were manageable. He had always been better at managing uncomfortable things than most people, because he had spent a long time training that particular muscle. He said nothing to Maisie. He made sure she was at school on time. He checked the locks on the apartment door, once, twice, once more before he slept. He changed the walk to the school by 1 block on Tuesdays. He identified 3 exit routes from the garage and confirmed that his truck was always parked facing out. He slept lightly. He always slept lightly. He had not, in 5 years, slept the way people slept in films, flat on his back, arms at his sides, unconscious. He slept the way animals slept in open terrain. Enough rest, surface awareness maintained. He had tried to go deeper than that, in the beginning. It hadn't taken. Some things, once rewired, stayed rewired. He didn't talk about this. He didn't talk about most things. He made Maisie's lunch the next morning: turkey, the good mustard she liked, an apple cut into segments because she'd once mentioned she preferred it that way, and he had remembered and walked her to the corner where the school bus stopped and watched until she was on it. Then he walked to work. 3 blocks into the walk, he identified the 4th watcher. Different from the others, better trained. It's accelerating, he thought. He didn't know yet toward what. He had his guesses about that, too. 6 weeks before the wedding, the corporate event was at a hotel lobby, the Meridian Grand, ironically. A charity gala for a children's hospital. Victoria went because her name was on the pediatric wing. She didn't enjoy galas. She endured them. She was 3 steps from the exit when the commotion erupted near the East Corridor. A man drunk, large, furious about something that had begun as a business grievance and escalated into theater had grabbed a woman by the arm near the coat check. 2 security guards were approaching from opposite ends of the lobby. Moving fast, but not fast enough. And the man was shouting, and the woman was trying to pull away. And the crowd had done what crowds do, frozen into a useless ring of spectators. Victoria was already calculating her angles. Security is 12 seconds away. She needs to twist her arm up and in. The nearest blunt object is the umbrella stand, when the man simply wasn't standing anymore. He was on the floor. It had happened in one movement. Clean, quiet, efficient. No wasted motion. The kind of technique that didn't look like a technique because it had been done so many thousands of times it had become reflex. The person who had done it was already stepping back, hands loose at his sides, expression entirely neutral. He looked at the guards when they arrived. He looked at the woman. He said something brief to her, inaudible from where Victoria stood, and she nodded, and it seemed to calm her. He retrieved her coat from the hook where it had fallen. He handed it to her. Then he turned, and Victoria saw his face. She knew how to look at people. 11 years of boardrooms and negotiations had given her the ability to read a face in the time it took to shake a hand. What she saw in his face was not adrenaline, not pride, not the flush of a man who had just done something impressive and knew it. Nothing. Absolute, practiced quiet. She had her assistant run the face through their standard contractor verification service the same night. The results came back clean, too clean. No military record, no arrests, no priors, no affiliation with any known security or intelligence firms, a social security number, a driver's license, a tax return showing income from automotive repair, the kind of file you built for a person you needed to disappear. She had her lead investigator dig deeper. He called her 2 days later. "There's nothing there," he said. "There's always something. Victoria. I ran this through every channel I have." A pause. "Nothing means something. You know that." She did know that. She also knew something else. Ashworth Capital had been receiving threats for 4 months. Not the standard corporate harassment specific threats. With specific knowledge, someone inside her world, adjacent to her world, wanted something from her. She had refused twice. The third time was going to be different. She felt it. She needed a buffer. She needed something living and capable and present. Not just security cameras and hired detail men who watched their phones. She needed someone who moved the way he had moved. She sent an intermediary. The intermediary came back looking unsettled. He said he was interested, the intermediary reported. He didn't seem surprised. Was he surprised? No, that's what I'm telling you. Victoria considered this for 2 days. Then she made the call herself. The conversation was 15 minutes. She laid out terms. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, there was a pause. "My daughter comes to the ceremony," he said. "Of course, I need to see the security layout of wherever we'll be living within 48 hours of the arrangement. I'll have it sent, and I retain the right to make modifications. Within reason." Another pause. "Agreed. Do you have questions?" 1. A beat. "Do you know who's threatening you?" "I have a name." "That's not the same as knowing." She didn't answer that. Because he was right. And she found, for one brief moment, that she couldn't speak. "I'll be at the venue," he said. "Saturday." He hung up first. The Ashworth estate sat on 3 acres outside the city. Stone exterior, 12 rooms, grounds that extended to a tree line that Lucas walked twice in the hour after the reception ended. Victoria watched from the upstairs window. He moved without a flashlight. He moved like he knew exactly where the low spots in the ground were, where the sight lines opened, where a person could approach without crossing camera coverage. He moved like he had memorized it already, which he had, from the blueprints she had sent. She had expected him to ask for a tour. He hadn't. He had sat with the blueprints for 40 minutes and then folded them and said, "I'll need to see the exterior once before dark." She had assumed he meant a brief walk. He had been out there for 2 hours. When he came back inside, he went directly to the kitchen sink and washed his hands. Then he went to each entry point on the ground floor without speaking to her. Front door, kitchen door, service entrance, the 3 ground floor windows that faced the east garden. He checked the locks. He tested each one with the particular focus of a person looking for failure points, not confirming security. He adjusted 2 without explanation. She was standing in the kitchen doorway when he finished. "There's a blind spot," he said. "East corner, between camera 2 and camera 3. Wide enough for 2 people moving slowly. I'll have it addressed tomorrow." Tonight, he looked at her. Not the way the guests had looked at her. Not appraising, not cold. Something else. Like he was giving her information. "Tonight, stay on the upper floor. Don't open windows. If the power cuts, don't use your phone as a light source. You're expecting something. I'm preparing for something. There's a difference." She studied him. The off-the-rack jacket was gone. He was in a plain dark shirt. And his posture had changed, not rigid, not military stiff, but arranged, like a person who has removed a costume and is now simply themselves. It was, she realized, the first time since the gala lobby that she was seeing him without performance of any kind. At the ceremony, he had been still in the way of a man presenting himself. Now the stillness was something else, something older. "Lucas." He waited. "What aren't you telling me?" "Most things," he said. It wasn't a joke. He said it the way people stated facts they had long since made peace with. He walked down the hall. She stayed in the kitchen doorway and listened to the house. The clock above the stove ticked. Somewhere outside, a branch tapped against a window in the wind. The refrigerator cycled on. These were the sounds of a normal evening in a house where nothing was wrong. She was not convinced nothing was wrong. She went upstairs. She did not sleep. She sat at the desk in the room they had been assigned, not a shared room. They had agreed on that without discussing it. A natural mutual understanding of the appropriate distance for 2 strangers who had just signed a legal document, and she opened her laptop and worked. Quarterly reports. 2 pending acquisition reviews. A memo that needed her signature before morning. She was good at this. The work. She had always been good at the work. It was the only thing, for 11 years, that had asked nothing of her except competence, and she had never, not once, failed to deliver competence. At 2 in the morning, the camera feeds flickered. She was awake. She was always awake when she was nervous, even if she showed nothing. The tablet on the nightstand showed 4 feeds. Front gate, rear garden, east corner, interior hall. One by one, they blurred. Not dead blurred. Someone was running interference. Close-range signal suppression. The kind of equipment that cost money and indicated planning. She felt her pulse do something she didn't permit it to do in public. She reached for her phone. The hall outside her door went quiet in the wrong way. Not the quiet of an empty house. The quiet of a house with people in it who were not moving. The specific held-breath quality of a space that had become a stage. Her hand stopped on the phone. 3 knocks on her door. Measured. Not urgent. His. "Don't turn on the light," he said through the door. His voice was level. "Stay behind the bed frame. Give me 4 minutes." She did not say what's happening. She did not say I'm scared. She did not say anything at all. She pulled the duvet aside, moved to the far side of the bed, and crouched behind the frame in the dark, and discovered something about herself that she had not known, that in a true emergency, stripped of context and boardroom and title, she was calm. Not fearless, she was not foolish enough to confuse the two, but calm. Her mind was still working. It was still cataloging. Exits, distances, the sound from downstairs, what it meant. This, she thought, was perhaps why they were compatible. The house held its breath. Somewhere below, a door opened. Then came the sounds she hadn't expected. Not the crash of forced entry. Not shouting. Just a series of contained, brief, final sounds, like a person solving a sequence of problems in quick succession. Each one complete before the next began. They came in through the east corridor. 6 of them. Professional suppressed weapons, calm earpieces, moving in practiced formation. They had the layout. They had the camera feeds neutralized. They had a target. The first one through the service entrance found the hallway empty. He moved to the corner. The corner moved first. A hand from the dark, economical force, and the man went down without a sound. No struggle. Lucas caught the weapon before it hit the floor. He moved past the body without looking at it. The second and third came together a practiced pair, covering angles. He was already behind them. He used one to block the other, compressed the sequence into something that lasted perhaps 3 seconds. 2 sounds. Then silence. The weapon clattered, but he caught it. He didn't use the guns. Not yet. The fourth man heard something and turned. Lucas was already close. Too close for the weapon to be useful. The man understood this, half a second too late. Victoria heard 4 distinct sounds from the upper floor. Not gunshots, impacts, heavy and final. Then nothing. Then footsteps measured, unhurried ascending the stairs. Her door opened. 2 more, Lucas said. He was not breathing hard. Upper floor. Stay low. She did not ask questions. She moved when he indicated movement. She pressed against the wall when he stopped. He navigated the dark hallway with the certainty of a person who had memorized not just the layout but the sound of every floorboard. At the end of the hall, a door. He held up 2 fingers, then pointed right. Then looked at her once, directly, checking. She nodded. He opened the door. The 2 remaining operatives had set up in the master sitting room. They had planned for a frightened target and a civilian husband. They had not planned for what came through the door. The first operative raised his weapon. Lucas was already not where the weapon was aimed. 1. He dropped below the sight line. 2. Forward movement, diagonal, using the furniture. 3. First contact the weapon arm, redirected. 4. The operative discharged once into the ceiling. 5. Lucas had the arm, the weight, the angle. The operative went down. 6. The second operative adjusted, aimed. 7. The first operative, now a controlled problem on the floor, became a shield. 8. The second operative hesitated. The hesitation was fatal. 9. Lucas moved from low to standing in one line of motion. 10. The second operative sat down against the far wall, blinking. No longer a problem. Silence. Victoria was in the doorway. She had seen violence before. Corporate violence, the slow-motion kind takedowns, liquidations, lives destroyed with a signature on paper. She had seen men break under pressure. She had seen fear, real fear, in the eyes of powerful people when they finally understood what they had lost. She had never seen this. He was standing in the center of the room. His shirt was torn at the shoulder. A graze, she realized, not a wound. His breathing was deliberate, controlled. He was scanning, methodical, checking each corner, each shadow, each operative in sequence, assessing. His face was nothing, absolutely nothing, not satisfied, not triumphant, not even relieved. The expression of a craftsman checking his work. He turned and looked at her. The nothing stayed for a moment. Then, very slowly, the thing underneath it rose, not emotion exactly, but the beginning of it. His shoulders dropped half an inch. His jaw released. "Are you hurt?" he said. She opened her mouth. Closed it. "Victoria." "No," she said. "I'm not hurt." He held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then he looked away and pulled out his phone and made a call she didn't hear because the ringing in her ears was very loud and very present, and she was staring at the room, at the tableau of 6 incapacitated people arranged with a kind of terrible geometry and understanding, for the first time, that she had made a calculation that was not, in fact, a calculation at all. She had not chosen a shield. She had made a choice she didn't yet have a name for. She stood in the doorway until her legs stopped feeling strange. Then she walked into the room and sat down in the armchair near the window and waited for whatever came next. Maisie was at her grandmother's house for the night. Victoria had insisted. Lucas had not argued. Now she understood why he hadn't argued. Morning. The law enforcement response was handled through channels that Victoria did not ask about and Lucas did not explain. The men were removed. The estate was swept. By 8 a.m., the only evidence remaining was a repaired camera feed and 2 replaced locks on the east corridor. Maisie was told there had been a plumbing emergency. Victoria sat across from Lucas at the kitchen table, both hands around a coffee mug, and looked at him in the light of a normal morning for the first time since the ceremony. "Tell me who you are," she said. "You know who I am. I know what's in your file. I know what's not in your file." She set the mug down. "Those men last night were not amateurs. They were trained, and you handled 6 of them in the dark, in unfamiliar spaces, without a weapon, without backup, without..." She stopped, "without anything." He was quiet for a moment. "I had the advantage of preparation," he said. "Lucas." He looked at her. Something shifted. "I was part of a unit," he said finally. "Special operations. Not the kind that gets named in news articles. The kind that doesn't have a unit designation on public record. What happened to the unit?" His hands were flat on the table. "I'm the only one who came home." She absorbed this. "How long ago?" 5 years. And then I had Maisie." He said it simply. Like it was the whole explanation. Like it was, in fact, the whole explanation. She thought about the file that had come back too clean. The social security number that appeared in the system 14 months after the date that would have corresponded to his birth. The tax returns that began in the right year and the right city and nowhere before that. "You built the file yourself," she said. He didn't confirm it. He didn't deny it. "There's a man," he said instead. "His name is Marcus Thorne. You know him as a competitor. You know him as the source of the threats against Ashworth Capital. That's accurate, but it's not complete." He looked at the table for a moment. He ran logistics for a private military contractor 8 years ago. When my unit went dark, the people who arranged that Thorne was adjacent to the network, I was never sure of his precise role. Victoria was very still. "So he came after me because of you. He came after you because of your company." "But yes." When he learned who you had married. A pause. It accelerated the timeline. You knew this might happen. I thought it was possible. You let it happen in my house. I let it happen where I could control the variables. He said it evenly, without apology. A public location, street, restaurant, parking structure. I couldn't have managed that outcome the same way. Here, I knew every entry point. I had 48 hours to prepare. The result was that everyone in the house survived, and all 6 operatives are in custody. She looked at him for a long moment. She had run companies through hostile takeovers. She had fired 400 people at once and stayed through the afternoon to answer every question personally. She had faced 2 securities investigations and won both. She was not a person who was often at a loss. You should have told me, she said. Yes, he said. I should have. That was it. No defense, no deflection. She noted this. Is it over? She asked. No. Marcus Thorne was 51. He had the appearance of a man who had made a great deal of money in industries that didn't require explaining: consulting, logistics, international investment. He sat on 2 charitable boards and attended 3 galas a year and donated to the campaigns of people who found oversight inconvenient. He had excellent manners and an office on the 38th floor of a building that was not far from Victoria's own. He had also, over the course of 11 years, arranged the disappearance of 4 people who had become problems for him. Not with his own hands. He did not use his own hands. That was the point. The day after the attack on the estate, a man named Christopher Oakes arrived at Lucas's door. Not the estate, his actual apartment on Chestnut Hill Road, which no one had the address for except the people who managed his file. This told Lucas several things. He recognized Oakes, not personally but the type, the posture, the shoes, the particular quality of the stillness. Someone from the same world he had once lived in, now operating in the gray space between institutional and private. She sent you, Lucas said. He did not mean Victoria. Oakes said nothing. Come in, Lucas said. They sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where Maisie had burned the garlic bread, where they ate pasta on Tuesday nights, where the refrigerator had a drawing of a whale taped to it with a note in Maisie's handwriting. For Dad, it's a blue whale, the biggest animal ever. Oakes placed a folder on the table. Thorne has been aware of your location for approximately 2 months, he said. The marriage was not in his plan. He interpreted it as a signal that I was operational again. Yes, I'm not. That's what you believe, Oakes said. He believes differently. And because he believes differently, he tapped the folder. Maisie's school. Her route. The neighbor on the 3rd floor, Gerald Marsh, who walks a dog every morning at 7:15. The woman across the hall. Lucas's face did not change. But something behind it did. Something that had been managed carefully. For 5 years. Tightened. He's using civilian proximity, Lucas said. He is. That's different from the unit. The unit had rules. Thorne is not constrained by the unit's rules. Oakes stood. He has 4 more teams. He will deploy them in sequence. The first was intended to determine your capabilities. The second will be better informed. When? He hasn't decided yet. That's your window. Oakes left. Lucas sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called Victoria. I need to meet with you, he said. I'm in a board meeting. I know. Leave it. A pause. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said. When she arrived, he showed her the folder. She read it. She was silent for longer than he expected her to be. He knows about Maisie, she said. Yes. She looked up. And for the first time since he had met her in the lobby, at the ceremony, in the dark corridor of the estate, she looked like something other than controlled, not frightened, something that preceded fright, something human. What do we do? She said. And Lucas, who had spent 5 years deciding that this world was behind him, who had built a quiet life with careful hands, who had memorized the schedule of the neighbor's dog walk and the sound of every floorboard in his apartment and the way Maisie's breathing changed when she was finally asleep. Lucas understood that the window Oakes had described was not a courtesy. It was the only option left. "We go to him," he said. It took 36 hours to prepare. Lucas spent the first 12 of them moving. Not at the estate, not at the apartment. Moving through the city in a way that would have looked, to anyone watching, like a man running ordinary errands. Hardware store, pharmacy, a sporting goods outlet near the industrial district. A storage unit that he had maintained for 5 years under a name that didn't connect to his file, that he had visited twice before and hoped never to open again. He opened it. Inside, what was needed? No more than that. He had always believed in minimalism, in precision, in the economy of carrying only what the moment required. The moment required specific things, and he took only those and locked the unit and drove away in a rental car. Victoria did not ask to come. She asked once, and Lucas said no. And she had the clarity to understand that this was not a negotiating position. It was a calculation that she was not equipped to override. She had spent 11 years being the smartest person in every room she entered. This was not her room. She knew enough to know the shape of what she didn't know. She did 3 things instead. She moved Maisie to a location that not even she knew completely, an arrangement made through channels that Lucas provided. A retired woman named Helen who had been, in another life, in a profession that made her both trustworthy and discreet, and who had a house outside the city with a dog and a garden, and the kind of calm that came from having survived worse than this. Maisie was told she was visiting a family friend. She packed the marine biology book and did not ask questions, which meant she understood more than they were saying. She hugged Lucas for longer than usual. He did not rush her out of it. Victoria called in a favor from a contact in federal law enforcement, a man named Deputy Director Callahan, who owed her something she had never intended to collect, and now collected quietly, by telephone, in 2 sentences, without drama. She placed 2 more calls. She would never be able to discuss any of this, in any deposition or affidavit or press release. Then she sat at the console in her private office, not the corporate office, the room in the estate that she had built for moments exactly like this, though she had told herself for 3 years that it was merely a precaution and maintained an encrypted line to a burner device that Lucas carried. She did not speak unless he spoke first. She understood, without being told, that this was the correct behavior. He needed the line clear. He needed silence on the other end to be information. She's there. Nothing has changed at her end. Proceed. She watched the clock. He spoke 4 times over the course of 9 hours. The first time, at 9:40 p.m. I'm in position. Clear. Level. Nothing in the voice. The second time, at 11:15 p.m. There are more people here than Oaks projected. Adjusting. A pause. Then, don't change anything on your end, as if he knew she would want to do something. She did want to do something. She stayed still. The third time, somewhere around 2 a.m., was not speech. She heard his breathing and the sound of a door metal, heavy, the sound of a door that should not have been open, and then movement, and then something she couldn't identify, and then a long silence that lasted 41 seconds, and she counted every one. Then, still operational. The word operational. Like he had to remind himself what category he was in. She did not say anything. She kept the line clear. The fourth time, at 4:03 a.m., she heard his breathing first. Then nothing for several seconds. When he spoke, his voice was measured, and she could hear, beneath the measure, something that she recognized from the operating table. She had never been on the voice of a person containing a significant amount of something through will, alone. I need an extraction address, he said. Medical. Her hand was already on her second phone. How bad? A pause. She counted. 1, 2, 3. Manageable, he said. Lucas. Victoria. Level. Tired. Underneath the level, the thing he was holding back. I need an address. She gave him one. A private facility, staffed by people who asked no questions because they had been compensated to ask no questions. She had arranged it 2 days ago. He had not told her to, but she had known, with the clarity she usually reserved for market projections, that she should. Marcus Thorne was taken into custody by federal agents at 4:17 a.m. at an address she had never heard before and would not hear again. His network, the logistics, the teams, the financial channels that had made him invisible for 11 years was substantially disrupted. Assets frozen, personnel detained. The official record showed a complex sting operation, the kind that made news in the financial press before being quietly buried. The official record showed none of Lucas's involvement. That was, she understood now, by design. It had always been by design. He had not existed in any official record for 5 years. He was not going to start existing now. She sat alone in the private office until dawn. She didn't do anything. She didn't open her laptop. She sat in the chair and watched the light change through the window and thought about how many of the most important things in a life happened in rooms where there was nothing to do but wait. At 6:15 a.m., a text arrived on her personal phone from a number she didn't recognize. Facility, come when you can. She was in the car in 4 minutes. He was in the hospital for 6 days. 2 cracked ribs, a through and through in the shoulder. She had been right the night of the attack, wrong about the severity. Laceration on the right side that required 31 stitches and an anesthesiologist who did not ask how it had happened because she had been paid not to ask. A hairline fracture in his left hand that he had not mentioned to anyone until a nurse found it during the second morning intake and gave him a look that he met with complete equanimity. "When did this happen?" the nurse asked. "Some time ago," he said. She wrote something in the chart and did not press further. Victoria came every day. She did not bring flowers. She sat in the chair beside the bed and brought coffee. Always correct, he took it with a single sugar, which she had noted once and remembered without effort. The way she remembered things that mattered, and she did not fill the silence with talk. This was something she had to learn, and she was aware she was learning it. She was a person of words, of precise and purposeful language that she deployed like instruments. Silence had always been, for her, a thing to manage, a vacuum to fill with information, with positions, with the articulation of what she needed and what she was willing to concede. She let it exist. It took effort. The first 2 days. By the third, it was easier. By the fifth, she understood something she had not expected, that sitting in the same room with a person, without anything being required of either of you, was its own kind of conversation. That presence, undemanding and consistent, said something that words often couldn't. She wondered if this was something Lucas had always known or something Maisie had taught him. On the third day, Maisie came. Victoria had arranged transport. Maisie arrived with a backpack and the marine biology book and an expression of fierce, suppressed worry that she was doing very poorly at hiding. She was 8 years old and she had, somewhere along the way, learned to brace herself, which was not a thing a child should need to learn, and which she had nonetheless learned with the quiet competence that seemed to characterize everything she did. She walked straight to the bed and looked at her father with the assessment of someone who had learned, young and involuntarily, how to check a person for damage. "You're okay," she said. "Not a question." "I'm okay," he said. "I mean actually okay. Not saying it okay. Actually okay." She looked at him for another moment. Then, satisfied, she sat on the edge of the bed, careful of the IV line, which she had clearly already located and catalogued, and opened her book and began reading aloud. Not to him specifically, just aloud, the way she always read, as if the information was too good to keep to herself, as if sitting in silence while good information existed was a kind of waste. Victoria sat in her chair. She did not leave. The book was about deep-sea creatures, things that lived in complete darkness, things that had developed, over evolutionary time, their own sources of light, not because the dark was a problem to be solved, but because it was simply the world they lived in. And in that world, you either made your own light or you didn't survive. Maisie did not point this out as a metaphor. She was 8. She was just reading, because she liked it. But Victoria heard it anyway. At some point, Maisie looked up from the book and looked at her. A long, direct look, in the way children looked when they had decided to make a decision and were making it in real time. "You stayed," Maisie said. "Yes." "Every day?" "Yes." Maisie considered this with the full weight of her attention, which was considerable. "My dad doesn't like it when people leave," she said. "He doesn't say so. But I can tell." "I know," Victoria said. She did know. She had only known him for a short time, but she knew this, the way you knew the load-bearing walls of a building you had been inside once, not from study, but from presence, from paying attention to what held things up. Maisie looked back at her book. "Okay," she said. Like that settled something. Like she had run the calculation and arrived at a result and was prepared to proceed on that basis. Victoria looked at Lucas. He was watching his daughter with the expression that she had come to identify as the thing behind his face when it was fully open. Not warm exactly, not soft, just unguarded. The word that came to her was anchored. He was anchored to this child in a way that had nothing to do with obligation and everything to do with the fact that she was the reason he had built a different life. He looked up, caught Victoria looking. He didn't look away, neither did she. On the 6th day, Lucas was cleared to leave. Victoria drove them back to the estate. Maisie fell asleep in the back seat with the marine biology book open on her lap, one hand loosely holding the spine, head tilted against the window. She slept the way children slept when they felt safe completely, without reservation. Lucas watched the city go past. "I've been thinking," he said. She waited. "The apartment. Chestnut Hill Road. I should keep it." He paused. "Maisie's school is 4 blocks away. The route is familiar to her. Changing everything at once." He looked at the window. "She's had enough change. We can make it work however you need," Victoria said. "I know you can." Another pause. "That's not the question." She glanced at him. He was looking at her. "The question," he said, "is whether you want to." The car was quiet. The city outside was doing its thing, lights, traffic. The ordinary, complicated life of a place that didn't know or care about the past 9 days. A city that had no idea what had been arranged and dismantled inside its borders, what risks had been carried and discharged, what a man had done alone in the dark so that his daughter could sleep without knowing why she was safe. Victoria thought about the gala, the lobby. The man who had moved like motion was effortless. She thought about the folder, about Maisie's school and Gerald Marsh, and the whale drawing on the refrigerator. She thought about 3 days ago, sitting in a hospital chair at 2 in the morning because she had told the nurse she was family, and discovered, as she said it, that it was the first time she had said something in years that was entirely true. Not a position, not a strategy. True. "Yes," she said, "I want to." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Okay, not I love you," not a speech. One word that carried everything it needed to carry, and nothing extra. She understood this language now. She was beginning to. At the estate, she helped him inside his shoulder, his hand. He didn't resist the help, which, she had come to understand, was significant. He had spent 5 years being the only one who helped. She made food neither of them ate very much of. Maisie woke up and ate both their portions and described 4 different species of deep-sea fish with great enthusiasm, and no awareness of how completely unremarkable she made the extraordinary seem. Later, after Maisie was asleep, Victoria sat on the edge of the bed in the room that had been arranged as his and looked at the floor. "I chose you," she said, "because I thought you could protect me. I know. That was..." She stopped. "Tried again." "That was the wrong reason." "It's a reasonable reason," he said. "It's not the reason anymore." She looked up. "I want to be clear about that. The reason is different now." He held her gaze. That thing behind his eyes, the managed depth of it, the 5 years of discipline of it shifted slightly. "Let something closer to the surface." "I know that too," he said. She reached over and took his hand, the uninjured one. He didn't pull away. He didn't move at all. He just let his hand be held, which was its own kind of courage for a man who had spent years being careful about what he let near him. Outside, the grounds were quiet. The cameras, new, better positioned, the blind spot closed, scanned their arcs in the cold. The city glittered beyond the tree line. Inside the estate, a child slept easily, dreaming perhaps of bioluminescent plankton or or the greatest animal that had ever lived, or something else entirely, something that only made sense inside the logic of 8, and in the small space between two people who had chosen each other first by calculation, then by something that calculations could not reach. There was silence. Not managed, not filled, just quiet. The good kind. Some men are small because the world made them that way. Some men are small because they chose it, because the thing they were protecting was worth more than the size of their name. Lucas Hale was 34, and he fixed engines and made pasta on Tuesdays and checked his locks 3 times before he slept. He was also the most dangerous person in any room he had ever entered. Both of these things were true at once. This is the part that took Victoria Ashworth the longest to understand. They were not separate facts. They were the same fact, seen from 2 different distances.